In September and October, I read a total of 12 books. I also DNF'd one book. So today I'm going to be doing my wrap up and talking about 13 books from worst to best. Of the 12 books that I read in September and October, one was lit fic, 2 were romance, 2 were sci-fi, and 7 were fantasy. The one that I DNF'd was also fantasy. Everyone has very unique, individualized reading tastes, so a book that I might have not liked, you might have loved, and vice versa. These are my personal opinions. It doesn't necessarily mean that a book is bad, it's just what my preference was. Let's get into the first book of the wrap-up, which was Alchemised by SenLinYu. I was very excited about this book. I pre-ordered it. I had it on my radar for a while. I was really looking forward to it. So I had very high expectations going into this. Unfortunately, this is the book that I DNF'd. I DNF'd it at 13%, which was actually around 140 pages, because this is an over 1,000-page book. So very long. Normally 13% of a book wouldn't seem like that much, wouldn't even really be worth mentioning, but that was a big chunk of this book. It is a very dark book. I know a lot of people have issues with that. Personally, that didn't really bother me. I don't think I actually got to any parts that were that dark. That was probably further into the story. I see the direction that it was going, and there was definitely some dark stuff. There's torture in the book. But my issue with this book is I just thought it was boring. This honestly read like a textbook to me. And I don't think it's that it was so long. It was that it was so long but didn't need to be. It went in excruciating detail about things, but it still wasn't clear. It had this very complex magic system that, in my opinion, was not explained very well. So it was really confusing. Also, not a lot was happening. This is based on the fanfiction Manacled, which is a Harry Potter Hermione fanfic. I've been seeing a lot of people love this book. I wonder if you had read Manacled first, if you could kind of fill in the gaps, fill in the backgrounds about the characters, draw your own connections about the magic system. But without that there, since I've never personally read Manacled, I was just very confused. I think on its own, Alchemized just wasn't that good of a book. Personally, I didn't like it at all. I think if I had read Manacled instead, I might have liked that. But ultimately, this just did not make sense to me. I thought it could have been half the length and would have been a lot better for it. Alchemized was a disappointment. Second book was Blood of Hercules by Jasmine Moss. I did rate this 1 star as well. I did finish the whole book. This is actually my first time rating a book 1 star that I completed. Normally if I finish a book, I at least give it 2 stars, but I really did not like this one. And I think that's a popular opinion with this book, is you either really love it or you really hate it. Blood of Hercules is a fantasy book. It follows Greek mythology. It's about this girl who is Hercules. It literally says that on the back. I'm just a girl, and as it turns out, I'm Hercules. This is framed as dark romance, but I did not feel any romantic connections with any of the love interests. And there are a lot of love interests. I think there were at least 6 men interested in our main character, Alexis. Basically, not a lot happens in this book. We follow Alexis as she finds out that she is a Spartan, and so she's going through these trials, trying to earn immortality, but she doesn't want to be there. And honestly, my main issue with the book was our main character. I just did not like her at all. She's very negative. I found her humor very strange. She also kept making the same jokes over and over again. This book could have been very interesting. I think the premise of it could have been really cool, but having this girl as the perspective we're looking at everything through was just miserable. She hates the situation. Everyone's excited about these cool trials. She thinks they're dumb. She's constantly complaining. She comes across as very whiny too. And we're supposed to believe that she's a strong character, but she's not. She's very immature. I'd say that the humor felt kind of like a middle schooler. So at one point in this book, I looked up if this was actually supposed to be middle grade, and then I realized obviously it's not, because there are a lot of adult themes in this book. It's very violent, very smutty, not appropriate for a child. But the immaturity of our main character felt like it was a kid. And the book starts off when she is 10 or 11, and then we're supposed to believe that she's 19, I think. But it didn't feel like her character grew at all. It felt like she stayed young. She also grows up as an orphan, so we're supposed to believe that she learned how to survive. She has the skill set to do that. She's one of the smartest people at her school, and she's fighting against all these men in these Spartan games. But that felt inconsistent with how her character behaved. I just didn't find that believable, and I didn't like how negative she was. Honestly, it wasn't even that I just didn't like her. I actively disliked her. I found her jokes not funny, not relatable, just obnoxious. So yeah, this one was a bummer. I know the second book actually just came out a couple days ago, which is why I read this book in October. I really wanted to enjoy it, to then go and read the second one right when it came out, but I am not going to be reading the second one. Next book, A Man Called Uva. Very loved book, but I did rate it 2 stars. I don't read a lot of literary fiction, but basically in that genre, it's very character focused, not very plot driven, which isn't my favorite thing. I think I could like it in certain circumstances, but again, kind of like Blood of Hercules, I just did not like our main character in this book at all. He's intended to be unlikable, but by the end of the book, we're supposed to like him, and I just did not get there. Uva has faced a lot of grief, loneliness. I do understand it. I do have empathy for him, but the way that he treated the other characters in this book, even by the end, yes, he grew a little bit, but he was still being rude to other people who were just trying to help him. And even if you've been through hard stuff, that's not an excuse to continue treating other people that way. So yeah, I liked the ways that he did grow. I just wanted to see him grow more, and we didn't quite get to that point. He's very judgmental, he complains a lot, he physically hurts people, he pushes kids, he is constantly verbally insulting people. It's just a very negative book. As people continued to be kind to him and continue to help him, the fact that he kept verbally insulting people felt like an abusive relationship to me. It's like he emotionally matured beyond where he was, but not enough for me to perceive him as sweet or likable. I really did like the theme of being surrounded by people instead of kind of closing in on yourself when you're facing difficult circumstances. So Parvana in this book, I loved her. The book is also very well written. It was easy to read. So I understand how people could like this. I do want to give Fredrik Backman another go and try reading one of his other books, because I think just me not really relating to this main character could have been the main issue. Although I'm not in any rush to read another book by him, since I did kind of dislike this so much. But I do get it. I get how this could be a very emotional read for people. Next book is an arc I got called The Second Death of Locke. I rated this one 3 stars, and I have very mixed opinions on it. There was a very interesting storyline. I liked the romance, it was sweet, but I did think it was slow-paced and kind of confusing at times. In this book, we're on a magical quest. There is a lot of found family, which I loved. There's a really unique magic system of wells and mages having to tether together to provide power during combat. So I loved that, and I really enjoyed the fight scenes because of it. But the pacing in between, especially in the first half of the book, kind of dragged. There was also a really strange naming system in the book. So a lot of the characters would have the same names, but only at certain points in the book, because they'd be named after places depending on their role, and that really confused me. So it was interesting, I did like it, but I feel like I wasn't fully invested in the story because I'd get kind of confused or felt like it would get slow at certain points. Next is The Rose Garden. I rated this 3.5 stars. I think it's a really interesting premise that didn't have the best execution, but I still really enjoyed it. This book is kind of like if you mixed the Selection book with the show Bridgerton. I've never actually seen Bridgerton, but I've seen enough about it to feel like that applies. It's set in the 1800s in England, and these girls are competing to win a prince's hand in marriage, and he is fae. So he is immortal, there's magic in this world. There's this concept of bargains where the queen, who's also fae, you can make a bargain with her to give something up and gain something else. For example, give up your finger and gain beautiful hair. So a lot of the girls in this story are trying to court men when they come of age, and so they go and make bargains to make themselves prettier or more talented, but in doing so they have to give something up. So that's a neat aspect of the story. The whole competition for the prince's hand specifically is really interesting. We got kind of the perspectives of all the candidates in this story, and I thought that was really cool to learn more of their backstories. But in doing so, I didn't feel as connected to our main character, unfortunately. So I do wish that Ivy was further developed. A lot of the relationships too, I think all of them I wish were further developed. I think every single relationship in this book was insta-love, and I didn't really love that. There were sweet moments, but I wished that there was more emotional connection to have these relationships built up further and make it more believable, because it is hard to believe that all of these characters are truly falling in love so quickly. The magic was cool, but I do wish there was more to the magic than the bargains, and I think we got more of that kind of at the end of the book, but at that point it felt kind of rushed. So I am curious to read the second book. It is not out yet, but I have pre-ordered it. I'm planning to read that in 2026 when it does come out, I think in the spring. So this was interesting. Definitely loved the concept behind it, but I was kind of craving more depth. And this is pretty short for a fantasy book. It's a little bit less than 400 pages, so not a short book, but short for fantasy. I think if it were longer, we could have gotten more depth in all of those areas, but hopefully all these things will be expanded on in book 2. The last 2 months were interesting because I had some very low rated books, but I also had a lot of very highly rated books. So from this point forward, all of these books are 5 stars. I am going to go through the Once Upon a Broken Heart trilogy altogether. That entire series isn't all 5 stars, but the first 2 books were 5 stars. So lots of good books, lots of lower rated books, not a lot in the middle. I had a couple 3.5 stars, but for the most part it was very high highs and very low lows, which I think is fine. It's just an interesting mix. But getting into books that I really loved, Once Upon a Broken Heart by Stephanie Garber. I read this entire trilogy in the last couple of months and loved it. This follows Evangeline Fox, who lives in this magical world. She is a very optimistic girl. She believes wholeheartedly in happily ever afters. And I loved how this book was written. From the first page, it had me hooked. This book is very reminiscent of fairy tales. I think it's based on Cinderella. It was definitely reminiscent of that. She attends a ball to marry a prince. There's an evil stepmother and stepsister. So it definitely reminds me of the fairy tales I'd read as a kid. It also had a lot of unique elements of its own though. So it didn't just feel like a Cinderella retelling. It just had kind of elements of that. This book has royalty, vampires, fates with magical powers, multiple love interests, prophecy, all things I loved. This book is also young adult, so it was a very easy read. Absolutely love this. Which brings me to the second book, The Ballad of Never After. Also 5 stars. Loved this one too. We had lots of questions answered, storylines tied up from the first book, but it also had a lot of new things that I had to look forward to in the third book. It was fast-paced, magical, lots of romantic tension. We learned a lot of backstory for the characters. So loved this one. And then that brings me to the third book, A Curse for True Love. This one was 3.5 stars. And this was a very strange one where I absolutely loved the book. And if the series had more books in it. I think this could have been a 5 stars for me. But my problem with it is there were a lot of loose ends not tied up for the story. And not just minor things either. I think there were like 5 to 10 pretty big things. Maybe 3 to 5 big things and then 5 smaller things. But there were major things from the first book, the second book, that I was kind of waiting for answers to the entire trilogy, and we just didn't get them. So I loved the book the whole time I was reading it, but then at the end, I felt like I wanted to read the next book, and there's not a next book. This is the end of the trilogy. So it wasn't what I expected. There was less focus on the romance. Some of the side characters from the previous stories just kind of disappeared altogether, or very minimally appeared. So I really enjoyed this book, but I was very confused afterwards. Next, Golden Sun. This is the second book in the Red Rising series. 5 stars. This is a sci-fi book by Pierce Brown. Absolutely incredible writing. This book is so fast-paced that I was kind of confused at the beginning and kind of had a hard time keeping track of characters and things, but I did not want to fault this book for that because ultimately I love how fast-paced it is. I think I read this book very slowly while reading other books, and I think if I had solely devoted my full attention to it, then I probably wouldn't have been so confused at the beginning. So I haven't read Morningstar yet because I really want to wait for the right time to just focus on that book, read it, and love it as I should. I did love this book. It left off on such a huge cliffhanger that I wanted to instantly read Morningstar, but I had other books to read before then, and like I said, I want to give that book my full attention. It deserves it. I'm hoping and kind of expecting that one to be a 5-star read. Red Rising, the first book, was also a 5-star read for me. There's a lot of moving pieces, complex strategies, chaos, dry humor, lots of good stuff in this book. There were a lot of crazy reveals in this book that I wasn't expecting. There's just constantly more and more happening. It's just incredible. If you have not read Red Rising yet, I highly recommend it. Next, Wild Reverence by Rebecca Ross. I got the ebook of this as an ARC, so I got to read it early, which was fantastic. It's such a good book. It's kind of a prequel to the Divine Rivals duology, which I absolutely loved both of those books. I did also order a physical copy of the book because it's just so beautiful. Specifically this edition, the cover is gorgeous. Not just the inside, but if you take the dust cover off, I love this. So pretty. I really wanted that. I love the artwork on this. I think that might be the most beautiful book I've ever owned, inside and out. The cover's gorgeous, but it's an absolutely beautiful story. It is a long book, but it's worth it. It is a love story between a goddess and a mortal man. And something really interesting about this book is it covers her whole lifespan. So we see her growing up as a child of a god and a goddess, which is really neat to see that element of their world. We see her learning her own power. We see the other gods and their magical powers. So I just loved this book. It was really interesting, a very cool fantasy read. If you love Divine Rivals, this is different characters, but you'll also love this. This story just had so much depth to it. Great fantasy, great romance. Highly recommend. The next book I read was an ARC, Drawn Together by Juliana Smith. This was the perfect fall read. I absolutely loved it. It was a romance book set in the fall in New York City between a children's book illustrator and a children's book author. It's kind of enemies to friends to lovers. Very cute read. Not true enemies, they just don't get along at first. But it's a grumpy sunshine romance. Super cozy vibes. Great friendships are formed and found family. There are very cute snippets from the guy's perspective at the end of some of the chapters, and that added so much to the story. It was so sweet to have his perspective just a little bit. So if you're looking for a good fall read as we go into November, I definitely recommend Drawn Together. Next is another ARC I read, Secret Haven by Cowles, and 5 stars. Loved this. It was the first book that I read by her, but this was actually the last book in the Sparrow Falls series. They are interconnected standalones, so no problem that I hadn't read the earlier ones. But I loved this one so much that I want to go back and read the other books in the series now. Going into it, I didn't realize that Catherine writes a mix of suspense, thriller, mystery books with romance. So I was just expecting a romance and was completely caught off guard when it turned into a murder mystery, but I absolutely loved it. So if you're a fan of true crime, shows like Criminal Minds, like I am, then you would love this book. It was a really cool mix of genres. What I loved about it even more though is it really focused on the foster care system, and that was so cool to see and learn more about. Our main character is a social worker. The author talked to social workers to really get this story as accurate as it could be, but it focused a lot on kids opening up and learning to trust after being in the foster care system and kind of the challenges with that, and I absolutely love that. This book was also very well written. All of the side characters seem to have their own very individual personalities. It seemed very intentional for all the characters who were in the story to be there. I think it helps that it's part of an interconnected series, so she kind of has had the chance to build out each of those characters and develop a personality for them. But in this final book, the conclusion, it was very clear that they all had their unique backstories, unique personalities. There were lots of characters, but I never felt confused or like there was too much going on. I loved it. This is a marriage of convenience love story. So if that's something you love, don't feel like you need to read the other books in the series first. You can if you want to, but you can also read them individually, which is what I did. Last book, my favorite book of this recap, and maybe my favorite book of all time, Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. I just finished it yesterday on Halloween. Left me speechless, left me in tears. I love this book. Absolutely incredible. It is a sci-fi book, but even if you're not into sci-fi, I feel like this is a book that anyone could love. It's a story of friendship, which was my favorite part. I did love the science elements too though. It seems like very complex science at first glance, but our main character explains his reasoning really well. It's easy to follow his logic as he's problem solving all these complex issues. This book made me feel smarter while reading it. It was really cool to learn about all the science. It's kind of an end of the world story, but it seems very plausible. Not that I think it'll actually happen, but it was just explained well. You could see the logic of how it could happen. It is also a light-hearted book. It has a lot of subtle humor. I feel like a topic like this you would expect to be very dark and heavy, but that's not how it is. Yes, I said I was in tears, but honestly that's just because I loved it so much and thought it was such a sweet story. So this one was very thought-provoking. It really resonated with me, and it was a great way to end the month. Highly recommend this book too. And if you love talking about books, be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in my next video.